You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow, and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
When Jenna accepts a routine babysitting job, she expects a quiet night caring for Emily, a gentle but withdrawn 10-year-old girl. But as darkness falls, Jenna quickly learns there's something terribly wrong within the walls of this seemingly ordinary house. Strange noises, chilling whispers, and violent outbursts soon reveal that Emily's imaginary friend isn't imaginary at all, and it holds a devastating secret. With every hour that passes, Jenna must confront a malevolent presence desperate for justice before it's too late. If you crave chilling tales, eerie twists, and stories that grip your soul, then subscribe to Soul Studios now. We tell the stories you were never meant to hear, and you never know which secret we'll reveal next.
Heavy footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor upstairs, each thud synchronized with the frantic pounding of my heart. In the darkness of the hallway, I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath as I clutched Emily tightly to my side. My ears rang with a high-pitched whine of fear. Over that, I could hear the rattling of a door on its hinges and the distant crash of something fragile shattering on the floor above us. Emily's small body trembled against me. I felt her fingers digging into my arm. "It's happening again," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the frantic thumping in my chest. Her face was buried against my sweater, but I caught the glisten of tears at the corners of her tightly shut eyes. Another crash from upstairs, louder this time, as if a piece of furniture had been thrown against a wall. I flinched, instinctively wrapping an arm around Emily's head to shield her. The house was alive with fury, walls shuddering from heavy impacts, floorboards creaking under invisible weight. A low, throaty moan of wind, or perhaps a voice, whistled through the narrow gap under the front door. The lights overhead flickered violently, plunging us into bursts of darkness between strobes of sickly yellow light. I realized I was holding my breath only when my lungs burned, forcing me to gasp. My mind raced. We had to move. We couldn't just crouch here in the hallway, waiting for whatever came next. Yet my legs felt anchored, heavy with dread. This was far beyond anything I had ever experienced. This was beyond real, and yet it was happening. Right here, right now. A door upstairs slammed with an explosive bang, shaking dust from the ceiling. Emily whimpered, a muted cry against me. I stroked her hair with trembling fingers, trying and failing to steady the quake in my own hands. "It's okay," I lied in a hushed tone. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." My voice sounded unconvincing even to me. From above came the rapid thump, thump, thump of footsteps sprinting down the upstairs hall. They were too quick, too heavy to belong to a 10-year-old girl, and besides, Emily was here, clinging to me. My stomach lurched. Those steps belonged to someone or something else. The footsteps halted suddenly, directly above where we crouched. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. The quiet was so deep it roared in my ears. I could hear my pulse hammering, could feel Emily's ragged breaths against my side. I looked up at the ceiling, my imagination conjuring the worst. Maybe it was listening for us. A single knock came from directly overhead. A sharp, deliberate rap on the wood floor above, as if some presence was announcing itself. It was followed by an impossibly slow, methodical thud, 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 moving toward the top of the staircase. It was coming for us. I knew it with a sudden, cold certainty that nearly stopped my heart. Without thinking, I grabbed Emily by the shoulders and pressed my face to hers. "We need to hide," I mouthed, the words barely a breath. She nodded, eyes wide and shining with terror. I could see my own fear reflected there. Staying low, I guided her across the hall into the small coat closet under the stairs. It was the only place I could think of. My shaking hands fumbled for the pull string of the single bare bulb inside. The moment the light flickered on, I regretted it. A sliver of yellow light leaked out under the closet door, a beacon in the dark. I yanked the string again, plunging us back into darkness, and pulled the door shut just as another crash rattled the house. Inside the cramped closet, we huddled amid the smell of mothballs and old wool. I settled on the floor, back braced against the wall, and cradled Emily in my lap. She wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder. I could feel her heart racing as wildly as my own. Outside the closet, the hall had gone quiet again, an unnatural, pressurized silence, as if the whole house was holding its breath with us. I strained to listen, every muscle in my body taut. For a long moment, nothing. Just as I dared to hope that maybe the worst was over, a new sound emerged. The soft creak of a step on the staircase. It was descending. Emily tensed in my arms and I tightened my grip around her. Step by step, the creaking continued, each footfall deliberate and drawn out, as if savouring our terror. I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted blood. At last, the slow steps reached the bottom, right outside our closet door. By my count, whatever it was now stood only a foot or two away. A thin wooden door was all that separated us from it. My mind screamed at me to do something, run, fight, anything, but my body refused to obey. Emily's fingernails dug into my skin. We both stared at the strip of light under the closet door, hardly daring to breathe. In the silence, a faint whisper seeped through, as if carried on a draught. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakable. Anger, agony, and longing all twisted together in that sibilant hiss. It was a voice, I realized with dawning horror, a woman's voice. Emily heard it too. I felt her shudder. In my ear, she breathed 3 fragile words that sent an ice-cold spike through my heart. "Don't tell Daddy." It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, just 1 week before that night of terror, when I first met Emily and her father. I was a 21-year-old college student home for the summer, and I'd picked up a babysitting job in our quiet little town to earn some extra cash. The ad described a well-behaved 10-year-old girl who needed evening care a few days a week. It sounded easy enough. The house was a modest 2-story Victorian on the edge of town. Its paint had faded to a tired grey and the wraparound porch creaked under my feet. Still, the place had its charms. Wind chimes tinkling softly under the porch awning, and an old tyre swing hanging from a big oak in the yard, swaying gently though there was no breeze. Emily's father, James Clark, greeted me at the door with a perfunctory smile. He was a tall, solidly built man in his late 30s, with tired eyes and a rumpled suit. He spoke in a flat, businesslike tone, running through the schedule and house rules as if reciting a checklist. Dinner at 7, bedtime at 9 sharp. No exceptions. He explained that he often worked late at the nearby factory and wouldn't be home until after midnight. While he talked, I noticed he avoided eye contact, fingers drumming nervously on the doorframe. At the time, I figured he was just a stressed single dad. My gaze drifted to a series of framed pictures in the foyer. One showed Emily as a toddler on the shoulders of a laughing woman with long chestnut hair. Emily's mother, I assumed. In another, the family stood together in front of the house, all smiling in happier times. James caught me looking, his jaw tightened. "My wife passed away," he said abruptly, voice flat. "It's been hard on Emily. She gets ideas, imaginary friends and whatnot. If she says anything strange, just don't encourage it." I nodded, unsure what to say other than a soft, "I'm sorry." He only gave a curt nod in return, then called up the stairs. "Emily, come say hi to Miss Jenna." Jenna is my name, though after everything that happened, even hearing it startles me. Light footsteps pattered, and a petite girl with honey blonde hair peered down from the top of the staircase, clutching a threadbare stuffed rabbit. I offered a gentle smile and a little wave. "Hi, Emily." She hesitated, then slowly came down. Up close, Emily was a beautiful child, though pale and a bit thin, with wary hazel eyes. She offered a quick, shy hug when I introduced myself. Her stuffed rabbit, missing one button eye, bumped my arm. "What's your bunny's name?" I asked softly. "Mr. Hopperty," she mumbled. James checked his watch. "All right, I have to get going," he said, bending to give Emily a brief hug, which she endured stiffly. "Be good," he murmured to her. To me, he added, "Call me if anything comes up. Emergency numbers are on the fridge." With that, he grabbed his coat and headed out, his car crunching down the gravel driveway in a cloud of dust. For a moment, Emily and I stood in the foyer in awkward silence. I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "So what would you like to do, Emily? Maybe we can have a snack or play a game before dinner?" She shrugged and quietly said, "We can watch TV." Relieved that she was at least responding, I followed her into the living room. The house's interior was cozy if a bit worn. Beige sofas draped with crocheted afghans, shelves of knickknacks, and the faint scent of vanilla and old perfume clinging to the air. A small TV in the corner flickered with a cartoon at low volume. On the mantel above the fireplace were more family photos, baby Emily in her mother's arms and one of James and Claire, I recalled her name from a note on the fridge, on their wedding day, beaming at each other. I tried to lighten the mood as we sat on the couch, asking about her favourite shows and summer plans. Emily answered in polite monosyllables. Her eyes kept drifting away toward empty doorways, shadowy corners, as if she expected something to be there. Every now and then, I'd catch her staring at nothing with a wary, listening expression. About 20 minutes into an episode of SpongeBob, I felt a sudden chill sweep through the room, raising goosebumps on my arms. It was strange. A moment ago it was warm. Emily noticed me shiver. She murmured, "She doesn't like it when it's too warm." I paused. "Who doesn't?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Emily's eyes fixed on the empty archway leading toward the kitchen. "My friend," she whispered. I forced a small smile. "Oh, your imaginary friend?" Emily looked back at me, face oddly serious for a child. "She's not imaginary, she's real. I just can't see her." A faint tremor ran through me at how matter-of-fact she sounded. James's warning about her ideas echoed in my head. I decided to tread lightly. "Is that so? Well, is she nice?" Emily hugged Mr. Hopperty to her chest. "She can be nice, but sometimes she gets mad. Really mad. Especially when Daddy comes home." As soon as she said it, she seemed to regret it. Her eyes widened and she grabbed my arm suddenly. "Don't tell Daddy I told you," she pleaded, her little hand cold and tight on me. I gave a reassuring squeeze. "I won't," I promised softly. "It's our secret." She searched my face for a moment, then nodded and released her grip. For a few moments, neither of us knew what to say. I glanced toward the kitchen archway she'd been staring at. Empty, of course. The air in the living room was still unnaturally cool. Before I could think of something to break the tension, the TV screen abruptly fizzled into grey and white static. The room filled with a harsh hiss. I jumped at the sudden noise. The remote lay untouched on the couch arm. Emily just stared at the TV, then back at the archway, her eyes huge. My heart kicked into a faster rhythm. "Must be the cable," I muttered. I leaned forward and grabbed the remote, clicking the channel button. The cartoon popped back on as if nothing happened. I exhaled slowly. "See? No biggie. Probably just the reception acting up." I flashed Emily a smile, masking my nerves. Emily only bit her lip. "She's mad," she whispered to her stuffed rabbit. Then, without another word, she slid off the couch and walked out of the living room. "Emily! Hey, wait up!" I called, hurrying after her. I caught up in the dining room. She stood by the table, but her eyes were on the door to the basement adjacent to the kitchen. It was open a crack, darkness looming beyond. A chill crept over me again. "Come on, let's not go poking around down there, okay?" I gently took her hand. Before I could steer her away, a thump sounded from below our feet, as if something heavy had fallen in the basement. Emily flinched and gripped my hand. I froze. The sound was so solid and distinct. My rational brain struggled. Maybe an old furnace kicking on, or the house settling. Either way, I didn't want us anywhere near those basement stairs. I reached out and pushed the basement door shut. The latch clicked. "We'll just keep this closed," I said, trying to sound casual. Basement is not safe for little girls, lots of sharp tools and stuff. I forced a chuckle. Almost immediately, a rapid series of hard knocks rattled the door on its hinges. I yelped and stumbled back, nearly pulling Emily off her feet. She screamed and clung to my side. Just as suddenly the knocking stopped, the door stilled, innocent and ordinary once again. In the echo of the bangs, I could hear my heart thunder. That was no imagination. I felt those knocks. Emily looked up at me, her face pale and eyes wide. "It's her. She doesn't like you now," she whispered. I forced a thin, shaky smile. "I'm sure that's not true," I managed, hiding my own terror. I led Emily back to the living room, determined to comfort her and myself. We curled up on the couch and I read her a story, doing my best to keep my voice steady. The house stayed quiet, and by the time I finished the book, Emily was nodding off. I tucked her into bed upstairs. "Will you stay until Daddy comes home?" she asked softly as I pulled the blanket to her chin. "Of course, I'll be right downstairs," I promised, smoothing her hair. She managed a tiny smile and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep, looking in that moment like any other peaceful child lost in a dream. Downstairs, I settled onto the sofa to wait for James. The silence in the house was profound. Only the steady tick of a clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator kept me company. I began to wonder if I had let my imagination get the best of me. Around midnight, I saw headlights sweep across the front window. Moments later, James walked in, looking as tired as when he'd left. "How'd it go?" he asked quietly. "All fine," I lied, mustering a smile as I gathered my things. "Emily was great. She's asleep." He nodded, relief in his eyes. After paying me, he thanked me and I stepped out into the cool night. As I walked to my car, I glanced up at the house. One of the curtains in Emily's bedroom twitched, as if someone was peering out from behind it. I squinted, but in the darkness I couldn't make anything out. Probably Emily checking that I left, I thought. The curtain fell still. I shook my head and let out a shaky laugh at myself. "It's just a shadow," I thought. Little did I know it was not a shadow at all. Just the beginning of a nightmare to come. Later that week, I found myself back at the Clarks' doorstep. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. The memory of that basement door pounding had gnawed at me, but I'd mostly convinced myself it was just the old house and my overactive imagination. Bills had to be paid after all, and I couldn't shake the thought of Emily's scared little face. She needed someone, even if that someone was a jumpy college kid like me. James greeted me brusquely as he headed out for another long shift. He paused just long enough to ask, "Everything all right?" Perhaps he saw the apprehension in my eyes. "Oh, yes, fine," I lied with a quick smile. "Just tired from class." Satisfied, he left for work. As his car disappeared down the road, I steadied myself with a deep breath and went inside to find Emily. I found her out back, standing by that old tyre swing under the oak tree. She wasn't riding it. Instead, she lightly pushed it in a slow circle, watching it spin. The sun was setting, the sky streaked orange and pink behind the dark outline of the tree. For a moment, with the wind chimes tinkling faintly, it was almost peaceful. "Hey there," I called softly from the porch. Emily turned and gave a small wave. I walked across the grass toward her. "Swinging by yourself?" "I'm not by myself," she said matter-of-factly. She nodded toward the empty swing, which drifted as if someone had just hopped off. "She likes the backyard. Mommy used to push me on this swing." My skin prickled at her words. I glanced at the swing, gently swaying on its rope. "You miss your mommy, huh?" I ventured. Emily left the swing and came to sit beside me on the wooden picnic bench. She kept her eyes on the grass. "Daddy said she's in heaven," she murmured, "but sometimes I feel like she never really left." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Maybe she didn't completely," I offered gently. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "What if she's here right now? I just can't see her." A soft breeze stirred the swing behind us, its chain creaking softly. I didn't know how to answer. Before I could, Emily continued in a trembling voice. "I wish she wasn't so angry. It scares me." I wrapped an arm around her thin shoulders. It scares me too, I admitted softly. Maybe she's angry because she wants to protect you, like a mom would. Emily looked up at me at that, as if considering the idea. In her delicate face, I saw a heartbreaking blend of hope and fear. I was about to say more when a delicate tinkle drifted through the air from inside the house, a slow, chiming melody. It was faint but unmistakable, a lullaby. I recognized the tune, "Hush, Little Baby." My mom used to sing it to me. Emily's eyes went wide. "That's Mommy's song," she whispered. A shiver spider walked up my spine. "Do you have a music box that plays that?" My voice was barely steady. She nodded. "It was Mommy's. I keep it in my room. Daddy doesn't like me to play it, but sometimes it plays by itself when she's here." I felt the blood drain from my face. The music was drifting from somewhere inside the house, echoing out to us. There was no reason we should be hearing that tune now, not when the music box was presumably shut upstairs. "Let's go inside," I said, trying to sound calm. Emily didn't argue. We entered the house to the tail end of the lullaby. The last few notes plinked and faded into an oppressive silence. I gently squeezed Emily's hand. "How about I make us some grilled cheese, huh?" I suggested, forcing cheerfulness. She managed a tiny smile and followed me into the kitchen. Soon, the warm smell of butter and toasted bread helped ease some of the tension. We ate at the small kitchen table, and I even got Emily to giggle once by flipping a sandwich in the pan like a flashy TV chef. After dinner, we set up a card game at the table. For a short while, everything felt almost normal. Emily's eyes lit up as she slapped down pears in Go Fish, and I feigned dramatic frustration at her thrashing me. Her laughter was a welcome sound. Then the overhead kitchen light flickered. We both froze, looking up. The bulb dimmed, then buzzed back to life. I let out a breath and forced a grin. "Old house wiring, huh?" I said. Emily started to nod. Then the lights throughout the house went out all at once, dropping us into darkness. Emily yelped and pressed against me. I stood so fast my chair toppled. Through the doorway, I could see the living room lamps had died too. The only light came from the last orange haze of dusk seeping through the windows. "Probably a blown fuse," I whispered, though my gut churned with doubt. There was no storm, no reason for an outage. Using my phone's flashlight, I guided Emily through the dark hall toward the basement door where the fuse box was. My dread grew with each step. The basement again. At the door, I hesitated. It was closed just as I'd left it that first night, except I could swear I had locked it back then, and now the old brass lock was unlatched. I hadn't touched it since. I shook off the thought and pulled the door open. The wooden stairs descended into pitch black. A cool, damp draft wafted up, carrying a faint, earthy smell. "Stay right with me," I whispered. Emily squeezed my hand in response. We descended slowly. Each step groaned underfoot. The air grew colder and heavier with each step down. My skin prickled with goosebumps. Something about that darkness felt terribly wrong, like the basement itself was watching us. Halfway down, the music box lullaby began playing again. The same gentle notes now echoing up from somewhere in the depths of the basement. Emily whimpered. I halted on the stairs, heart pounding. Part of me screamed to turn around and run, forget the fuse. But another part, morbid curiosity, or a desperate need to understand, compelled me onward. I had to know what was happening in this house. At the bottom, I fumbled for the string to the single light bulb. I yanked it. The bulb flickered on, its weak glow illuminating a low ceiling and concrete walls. The basement was cluttered but ordinary. Shelves stacked with boxes and old tools, a washer and dryer, a workbench with paint cans and firewood. And there, on the packed dirt portion of the floor in the far corner, sat a small wooden music box with its lid open, plinking out that soft lullaby. I recognised the floral inlay on the lid from a photo Emily had shown me. This was her mother's music box. But how did it get down here? The lullaby wound down with a warped, drawn-out note and then stopped. Silence cloaked us once more. Suddenly, the basement door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. The bulb above us burst with a pop, plunging us into darkness. Emily screamed. I grabbed her and backed against the wall, frantically shining my phone's flashlight around. "Who's there?" I shouted into the dark, voice cracking. Our words echoed. For a moment, the only sound was our own panicked breathing. Then from the blackness came a new noise. A muffled, choking sob. It sounded like a woman crying somewhere nearby. My scalp prickled. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The sobbing grew louder, turning into a ragged, wet moan that resonated off the basement walls. I swept the flashlight in the direction of the sound, and the beam fell upon a crouching shape in the far corner, where moments ago there had been nothing. It was the outline of a woman huddled on the ground. Long, tangled hair obscured her face. She rocked back and forth on her feet with an unnaturally jerky motion. My throat constricted, a scream stuck in it. Emily buried her face in my side, shaking. "Ma'am?" I croaked. The figure jerked at the sound of my voice. One pale, dirt-stained hand reached up and swept the curtain of hair aside in a sudden twitch. I bit back a gasp. In my phone's harsh light, I saw a gaunt face with ash-grey skin and milky, lifeless eyes. Despite the deathly pallor, I recognized those features from the photos upstairs. It was Claire Clark, Emily's mother. "Claire!" I exhaled without thinking. My knees nearly buckled. The air had gone frigid. I could see our breath pluming. Emily peeked, saw the figure, and whimpered, "Mommy?" At the word mommy, the figure's head cocked at a bizarre angle, as if yanked by invisible strings. In the same instant, the ghostly woman vanished. One blink she was there, the next, gone. The corner stood empty. I didn't have time to process it before chaos erupted. The storage shelf behind us tipped over with a tremendous crash, sending boxes and tools clattering across the floor. I yanked Emily forward just in time to avoid it crushing us. "Go! Up the stairs!" I screamed, shoving Emily toward the steps. The entire basement seemed to come alive, quaking with fury. Objects hurled themselves off other shelves. Glass jars shattered against the walls. A heavy piece of firewood from the stack flew past my shoulder, narrowly missing me. Emily scrambled up the stairs in the dark, sobbing. I was right behind her, phone flashlight bobbing crazily. Another log whizzed past, clipping my calf with a burst of pain, but adrenaline drove me on. We reached the top of the stairs. I slammed into the door. It was stuck. "No, no, no!" I snarled, throwing my shoulder against it. With a splintering jolt, the door burst open and we spilled out into the hallway. I kicked the door shut and wedged a chair under the knob for good measure. For a second, I just clung to Emily in the darkness of the hallway, both of us gasping. Upstairs, the crashes continued. Furniture overturning, walls shaking. A male voice, James's voice, yelled in alarm over the din. He must have just gotten home and walked straight into this nightmare. "Oh God, James!" We weren't safe here in the hall. "Come on," I panted to Emily. I grabbed her hand and ran. I yanked Emily toward the front door, desperate to escape. I fumbled with the knob, but it wouldn't budge, held shut by an unseen force. Before I could even curse, the door tore open on its own with a sudden blast of icy air. Seizing the chance, I practically threw Emily onto the porch and lunged out after her. A second later, the door slammed itself shut behind us with a deafening boom. From inside came James's voice, screaming in terror, rising to a horrific pitch. Emily wailed, "Daddy!" and surged toward the door. I grabbed her around the waist, my own instincts in turmoil. I had the insane urge to rip the door back open and somehow save him, but I stopped myself. I couldn't put Emily back in harm's way. Clutching the shaking child to me, I backed off the porch into the front yard. "Stay here," I urged her, though I didn't dare leave her alone. Inside the house, the crashes climaxed with one final bone-shaking thud, then abruptly ceased. James's screams cut off as well, leaving an awful ringing silence. The front door swung ajar with an eerie creak, as if inviting us back in. I could see through it into the front hall, but darkness pooled beyond. "James?" I called out reflexively. No reply, only that heavy silence. Against every logical fibre in my being, I stepped forward and, keeping Emily behind me, crossed the threshold back into the foyer. The air inside was bitterly cold and still. "Mr. Clark?" My voice was barely audible. Dimly, I became aware of a figure lying at the base of the staircase. James. He was sprawled on his back in an unnatural position, limbs akimbo. I edged closer, one hand clutching Emily's and the other groping along the wall for the light switch. I flicked it, Nothing. The power was still out. Emily realized what I was seeing and broke free, darting past me. "Daddy," she cried. "Emily, wait!" I caught her just as she reached her father's body. I aimed my phone's flashlight downward and felt my stomach twist. James's lifeless eyes stared at the ceiling and the angle of his neck. It was very wrong. A pool of blood was spreading out beneath his head like a dark halo on the hardwood. Emily began to sob. She shook his shoulder. "Daddy, get up! Please, get up!" Tears stung my own eyes. I knelt and pulled her back gently. There was no question. James Clark was dead. Above us, at the top of the stairs, a faint shape flickered into view. We both looked up, and I heard Emily suck in a breath. It was Claire's ghost. Now that furious rage seemed to have drained from her. She stood almost calmly in the darkness, a semi-transparent silhouette of the woman from the photographs. Those pale eyes looked down at the scene of her husband's death with an expression I can only describe as sorrowful satisfaction, a grim, grieving relief. Emily hiccuped a sob. "Mommy?" she called in a trembling voice. At that, Claire's ghost drifted down a few steps, moving not quite like a person but as if suspended in water. Halfway down, she paused. One ghostly hand reached out over the banister toward the wall where a framed finger painting hung, the one Emily had proudly shown me on my first day, of a family of 3 stick figures holding hands in a bright garden. Her touch didn't quite meet the painting, passing through it, but I swear I saw her face soften with heartbreak. Her form wavered, and for an instant I thought I glimpsed the gentle mother she once was beneath the deathly visage. "Mommy?" Emily called again, stepping forward. At her voice, Claire's figure began to unravel, the dark mist of her form thinning. I thought I heard, just for a second, the faintest trace of her humming that lullaby one more time. And then she was gone. The staircase was empty. In the darkness, Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I scooped her into my arms and stumbled back out onto the porch, as far from James's body and the lingering chill inside as possible. We sat there on the front steps, rocked by shock and grief. I held her and rocked gently, whispering, "It's okay, you're okay," even though nothing felt okay. The nightmare was over, or so I hoped. In the days that followed, I never breathed a word about ghosts to the police. I wasn't about to be dismissed as insane. I told them the bare basics. I heard screams and commotion and found James at the bottom of the stairs, presumably after a fall. I got Emily out of the house. They ultimately ruled his death an accident due to a fall down the stairs, though the bizarre destruction inside left them baffled. Later, during their investigation, authorities uncovered human remains beneath a loose patch of the basement dirt. The remains were identified as Claire's. It turned out James had murdered his wife and hidden her body under his own house, a heinous secret he very nearly took to his grave. Emily went to live with her maternal aunt after that night. A few weeks later, during one of my visits, she looked at me with those big sad eyes and asked, "Do you think Mommy is in heaven now?" I mustered a smile and squeezed her hand. "I think she's at peace and watching over you," I replied gently. Emily nodded and hugged Mr. Hopperty to her chest, seeming comforted. I dearly want to believe what I told her. But even now I sometimes wake in the dead of night, certain I hear the creak of a familiar floorboard or the faint melody of a lullaby humming through the dark. I'll never forget what happened in that house. Some nightmares are real, and sometimes the dead don't rest until their story is told. Don't tell Daddy. Those words will haunt me for the rest of my days. Sometimes the darkest secrets aren't buried deep enough, because when the past claws its way to the surface, justice can take a terrifying form. Remember, some secrets should never be whispered, especially not to Daddy. Some whispers echo forever.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.